If the United States can win in Afghanistan, it'll be thanks to the privates and corporals who are now being asked to turn around an 8-year war with a brand new strategy. We saw how tough it is when we spent 3 weeks with the 2nd Battalion of the 8th Marine Regiment, part of the 21,000 reinforcements ordered over the last several months by President Obama. The new plan sounds simple: separate the enemy from the people, then convince the Afghans to support their government. But it requires more forces, more time, and more risk. While the President is wrestling with whether to send up to 40,000 more troops, we joined with the battalion's Company G, Gulf Company, which was taking the highest casualties in the Taliban homeland. In September, the men of Gulf Company assembled for roll call in their combat outpost.
Lance Corporal Jonathan F. Stroud. Lance Corporal Gregory A. Posey.
First Sergeant Robert Pullen shouted for Marines who could not answer. This was the roll of the dead.
Lance Corporal Dennis J. Burrow. Lance Corporal Javier Olvera.
The company's 200 Marines paused for a battlefield memorial for the 7 they call brothers, killed in action. This was Gulf Company in July, pushing into part of Afghanistan never occupied by U.S. troops. They were ambushed repeatedly by the Taliban, the enemy that carries the name of the fundamentalist Islamic government overthrown by the U.S. invasion after 9/11. But the enemy isn't one force. Taliban is a catch-all for a collection of tribes and warlords. Some are religious extremists, some are drug traffickers, and in Gulf's area, many are locals fighting for money. Gulf Company set up in Koshte, a village in Helmand Province near Pakistan. It's a strange twist of history that Gulf Company's area used to be called Little America. In the 1950s, a massive U.S. foreign aid project dug the canals that now feed half of the world's heroin poppies and shoulder-high marijuana, both prime sources of Taliban cash.
Ask them if they heard the rocket shot from out here earlier.
Gulf Company covers just a few square miles. The job is to push the Taliban out and stay in place. Second Lieutenant Dan O'Hara from Chicago is a platoon leader.
Do they know that we've been shot at from this compound before?
It's his first combat tour. 2 of his Marines have been killed. You know, I wonder how you know the enemy from the citizens around here.
Yeah, for the most part you don't until they start shooting at you. And even then, you know, their tactic is hit and run. They'll shoot, and then before you get the chance to close on them, they'll run away and kind of just blend back into the population.
Lieutenant Colonel Christian Cabanis leads the battalion.
These people have suffered for too long. We can't add to it.
He sent Gulf Company into battle with orders to use restraint. This is a big change since the spring. All U.S. forces in Afghanistan are now being told to protect civilians, even if the enemy gets away. Over the last 8 years, Afghans have been outraged by civilian deaths, and it's a big reason the U.S. is not winning.
Killing 1,000 Taliban is great, but if I kill 2 civilians in the process, it's a loss.
How many of the enemy have you killed so far?
I have no idea. And it's really irrelevant.
Body count's not something that you track.
It doesn't tell me that I'm being successful. It doesn't tell me that at all. The number of tips that I receive from the local population about IEDs in the area, Taliban in the area, that is a measure of effectiveness.
You talk about restraint. What do you mean by that?
As I told the Marines before we deployed, it's about a 3-second decision, especially with this personal weapon. The first second is, can I? Next 2 are, should I? What is going to be the effect of my action? Is it going to move the Afghan closer to the government or further away?
After 2 months, Gulf Company reported 0 civilians killed. A success, but at the cost of its 7 Marines. What's the biggest threat to your Marines?
The biggest threat would be the improvised explosive devices, for sure.
IEDs. The search for explosives and IEDs dominates the patrols. They hunt for the buried plywood that breaks under a boot and closes the circuit on a 40-pound bomb made of fertilizer. The enemy pays villagers to plant them at $10 each.
I got a hit right at the end of this thing.
Hey, there's a hit at the end of the thing. And stay away from that crater.
IEDs often push the Marines off the roads and into the fields flooded with sewage. With 60 pounds of armor and weapons, it's exhausting, and it is possible to be so bone-tired that the temptation to step on the next solid ground trumps even the fear of death.
We should be good pushing up through here until we get near that IED site.
On August 31st, Dan O'Hara and Lance Corporal Jonathan Quiseno from Orlando planned a mission to clear an IED. It would be a day that O'Hara would not return with all of his Marines. On the patrol, they destroyed the IED, but coming back, Lance Corporal David Hall from Lorain, Ohio, triggered another. A medevac helicopter carried his body away, and the Taliban opened fire. The next day, O'Hara gathered Hall's squad. When a Marine is killed, there is worry and doubt, which a platoon leader should end quickly.
His death isn't the fault of anybody who's sitting here. If it belongs to anybody, it would belong to me, because I was the one out there who was in charge, making the decisions. So just understand, we're doing the right things. We're doing good work. We're making a difference here. You know, we're here fighting for the people of Afghanistan. We're here ultimately fighting for our country, you know, which is what we all signed up to do.
After Hall's death, Lance Corporal Quiseno told us what many Marines are saying about restraint. They understand the strategy, follow their orders, and yet...
It sucks. I don't know another word to say it. It sucks because all you want to do is get them, you know, for revenge, you know, to say the least.
Because the Marines have been lost?
Sure. I mean, definitely. You know, I mean, how many times have we been shot at? How many times do we know a direction, a distance, a compound, a vicinity where these guys are coming at, and then... You know, conventional war, that's it. You know, that whole compound will go. You know, but we can't drop ordnance on them because of civilian casualties.
But you said it was frustrating. What do you mean?
It's frustrating. I don't know if anybody really understands the amount of stress that the guys are already starting to feel because of that. You know, simply just having the hands tied behind your back, if you will.
Right now, the president is considering a request to expand the counterinsurgency strategy. It's become controversial in Washington, and a decision is likely in a few weeks. In late August, before the controversy, we asked America's top commander in southern Afghanistan, Brigadier General John Nicholson, how the current strategy is supposed to work.
Clearly at the front end, you're involved in heavy security operations. In this case, while we build up the Afghan security forces until they are at a level of capability where they can take over the majority of the fighting, we are going to be in a frontline combat role. But over time, we become more focused on aspects of this, such as the economic development, education, and helping the government provide basic services to the people.
How long does it take to fight a counterinsurgency like this?
Well, if you look back in history, a successful counterinsurgency usually lasts at least 14 years.
General, you are talking about building a country.
Mm-hmm.
It would take generations to do that.
Yeah. Well, it's the first thing I'd say is it's doable. The second thing I come back to is it's important. Why is it important? This place was the sanctuary for Al-Qaeda, from which they launch attacks against our country. Secondly, the people here want this. They want a better way of life. Yes, it's difficult, and yes, it's challenging.
It's challenging because 70% of Afghans are illiterate and 80% have no electricity. One Marine said, "It's like fighting in the Bible." In Gulf Company's area, skepticism is worn into the faces that confront the company commander, Captain Matt Martin. The U.S. sees the new strategy as a fresh start. Afghans see it as the start of the 9th year that the Taliban haven't been defeated.
If the men in your village are working with the Taliban, all I can tell you is to tell them to stop now.
Every Wednesday, Captain Martin holds a village council called Ashura. This is what his Marines died for, the chance to win the people.
The government is interested in putting a clinic here in Koshte.
Martin offers government aid projects, but it's a tough sell. They want to talk about security. This man said, Don't say we're giving refuge to the Taliban. When you leave, they'll attack us. I'm not powerful enough to resist the Taliban. You're not accepting my point of view. We become victims between you and the Taliban. This man worried that the U.S. force is too small. You can't hide the sun with two fingers, he said. The Taliban are everywhere. The next week, Gulf Company was inviting a man named Yunus to the meeting. He pulled out a letter that the Taliban had nailed to the mosque, threatening anyone who met with the Americans. But the letter didn't keep him from the meeting, and Gulf Company counted that as a win. Yunus said, "When we're assured of our security, we'll cooperate with the Afghan army." On one of our last days with Gulf, we saw how cooperation can save the lives of Marines. Using new and secret technology, the Marines destroyed an IED from long range while it was still being planted in the road. We went with Captain Zach Lehman on a patrol to investigate the site. But at the same time, a quarter-mile away, a different patrol led by Lance Corporal Kiseno was stopped by a terrified villager.
Tell him to calm down. Tell him to calm down.
The man said the Taliban was setting an ambush for Captain Lehman's patrol, headed to the IED strike. We won't show his face. He risked his life to tip the Marines.
He believes the Taliban are in the corn, set up in ambush positions.
Kiseno reported to base that Lehman's patrol was to be ambushed.
What do you see here? We had 3 individuals in place in the IED. Here it's a 40-pound jug of homemade explosive.
At that moment, word of the planned ambush reached Lehman.
Hey, let's go!
Lehman's Marines slipped into the cover of the corn for the patrol home, a small U.S. victory on a long route out of Afghanistan. General John Nicholson is now at the Pentagon, planning the future of the war.
This is a start. Yes. I mean, it's a down payment on what, and it's a down payment we have not made to date. And that is to put in the level of security forces necessary to begin to execute the strategy that we've laid out for ourselves.
Lance Corporal Patrick W. Schimmel.
For Gulf Company, the down payment has been made. It will be a long time before the Marines know what was purchased with the lives they remembered in the battlefield memorial.
Lance Corporal Leopold F. DeMoss. Lance Corporal David R. Hall.